Most people think the Plaza Hotel is the safest symbol of success in New York, a place where money finally gets to rest. Marble floors, gold keys, rooms that cost $1,000 a night, a building that looks immune to failure, but every man who tried to own it lost everything. Since 1907, more than a dozen millionaires and billionaires have watched their fortunes bleed out inside these walls. The hotel never closes, never goes bankrupt, never dies. It simply waits, and when the next owner arrives, it begins again. The palace that refused modesty. When the Plaza opened, New York had never seen a hotel built to embarrass every other building on the street. It arrived at the corner of Fifth Avenue and Central Park South, like a declaration of war against restraint. 18 stories of French Renaissance fantasy, gleaming white against the skyline. 570 rooms, each one larger than most New York apartments. A building that did not whisper wealth, it screamed it. The year was 1907. America was drunk on its own success. The Gilded Age had taught the country that excess was not a vice, but proof of legitimacy. If you were not spending recklessly, you were not worth noticing. The Plaza understood this. It was designed not to house guests, but to humiliate every rival hotel in the city. The architect, Henry Janeway Hardenberg, had already designed the original Dakota and the first Waldorf Astoria. He knew how to build monuments, but the Plaza was different. It had to be larger, heavier, more expensive than anything he had done before. The design demanded 300,000 cubic feet of marble, ballrooms that could swallow entire weddings, a palm court wrapped in glass and gold leaf. Every chandelier weighed more than a carriage. The construction budget was $12 million. That number meant nothing to most people in 1907. It still means nothing today unless you adjust it. In modern terms, that is more than $400 million spent before a single guest checked in. The building consumed money the way other structures consumed brick and mortar. But in 1907, that was the point. The Plaza was not built to be profitable. It was built to be impossible to ignore. Fifth Avenue was already lined with mansions owned by families who believed their names would last forever. The Vanderbilts, the Astors, the Carnegies. They built homes that looked like French chateaux and Italian palazzos, importing entire rooms from European estates. The Plaza had to compete with that. It had to offer the same grandeur, the same sense of arrival, but in a building where anyone with enough money could rent the feeling for a night. That was the genius and the trap. The Plaza promised ownership without the burden of permanence. You could stay in a room that felt like a palace, eat in dining rooms that rivaled the homes of robber barons, and leave the next morning without worrying about maintenance or taxes. It was the fantasy of aristocracy without the responsibility. But someone had to carry that responsibility. Someone had to own the building, staff it, heat it, polish the marble, replace the linens, repair the plumbing. Someone had to pay for the illusion, and the cost of that illusion was more than anyone expected. Harry Black's perfect gamble. Harry Black believed he was not building a hotel, but a monument that would secure his name forever. He was already one of the most successful developers in New York when he decided to rebuild the Plaza. The original hotel had stood on the same corner since 1890, a modest structure that made money quietly. Black tore it down. He wanted something that would outlast him. Black had spent his career building skyscrapers. The Fuller Building, better known as the Flatiron, was his masterpiece. 22 stories wedged into a triangular plot. A building so strange and so bold that people stopped on the street to stare at it. Black understood spectacle. He knew that in New York, attention was currency. But skyscrapers were crowded. Every developer in the city was racing to build taller, faster, cheaper. Hotels were different. A great hotel was not measured by height, but by reputation. The Waldorf Astoria had proven that. It was not the tallest building in the city, but it was the most famous. Black wanted that kind of permanence. The decision to rebuild the plaza was not irrational. The location was perfect. Fifth Avenue was becoming the most valuable street in America. Central Park provided views that could not be replicated. The nearby mansions guaranteed a supply of wealthy guests who expected luxury. The math should have worked. Black partnered with Fred Sterry, a hotel operator who had run the Homestead Resort in Virginia. Sterry knew how to manage luxury properties. He understood what the wealthy expected. Together, they envisioned a hotel that would set a new standard, a place so refined that staying anywhere else would feel like a downgrade. They hired Henry Hardenberg and gave him an unlimited budget. Every material had to be the best. The marble had to be imported. The carpets had to be custom woven. The chandeliers had to be designed specifically for the plaza, so large and so ornate that they could not be used anywhere else. Black did not question the costs. He believed that quality would justify the expense. Guests would pay premium rates because the experience would be unmatched. The plaza would fill every night, year after year, generating enough revenue to cover the construction debt and deliver a profit. He was wrong about almost everything except the guests. They came, they marveled, they paid, but the numbers did not work. Black had built a hotel that required an army to operate: housekeepers, porters, chefs, concierges, engineers, telephone operators, laundry staff. The payroll alone consumed thousands of dollars every week. The building needed coal in the winter, ice in the summer, constant repairs to plumbing and wiring that had been installed with more concern for beauty than durability. Every luxury that impressed guests cost money to maintain. The Palm Court required fresh flowers daily. The ballrooms needed polishing after every event. The kitchens burned through ingredients that had to be ordered from specialty suppliers. The linens had to be replaced constantly because wealthy guests expected perfection. Black had assumed that a building this beautiful would run itself. He learned the opposite. Beauty is expensive, not just to create, but to sustain. And the plaza demanded perfection every single day. By 1910, just 3 years after opening, Black was borrowing money to cover operating losses. He sold shares in the building to investors who believed the hotel would eventually turn a profit. It never did. Not under his ownership. Not under anyone's ownership for the next century. Black died in 1930, his fortune gone. The plaza was still standing. Opening night, an absolute triumph. On opening night, the plaza looked like a victory so complete that failure felt impossible. October 1st, 1907. The doors opened at 6 in the evening. Carriages lined Fifth Avenue for blocks. Women in gowns that cost more than most families earned in a year stepped onto red carpets. Men in top hats and tailcoats followed. The press called it the most important social event of the season. Inside, the hotel glowed. Every chandelier blazed. The marble floors reflected light like water. The grand staircase swept upward in a curve so graceful it looked like sculpture. The Palm Court was filled with orchids and palms imported from Florida. The oak room smelled of fresh varnish and cigar smoke. The ballrooms echoed with live orchestras. The plaza had 570 rooms. By midnight, nearly 400 were reserved. The waiting list stretched into the following month. Guests who had booked rooms weeks in advance arrived with luggage that required 3 porters to carry. They did not ask about the rates. They assumed that staying at the plaza was worth whatever it cost, and the rates were extraordinary. A single room started at $5 a night, more than most workers earned in a week. Suites cost $15, $20, even $30. The most expensive suite, reserved for visiting dignitaries and industrial tycoons, cost $50 per night. In modern terms, that is more than $1,700 for a single evening. The guests did not complain. They bragged. Staying at the plaza was not just accommodation. It was proof that you had arrived. Families who had made their fortunes in railroads and steel and oil checked in for weeks at a time, treating the hotel like a second home. Actresses and opera singers took suites and threw parties that lasted until dawn. European aristocrats arrived expecting standards that matched the grand hotels of Paris and London. The plaza met those expectations. The opening night reviews were ecstatic. The New York Times called it the finest hotel in the world. Harper's Weekly published illustrations of the Palm Court and declared it a masterpiece of American design. Society columnists filled their pages with descriptions of who attended, what they wore, how much they spent. Fred Sterry, the hotel's managing director, stood in the lobby and watched the crowd. He had spent months preparing for this moment. Every staff member had been trained. Every room had been inspected. Every detail had been perfected. The opening was flawless. Harry Black stood beside him. He saw something different. He saw a building that had cost more to build than he had planned, that required more staff than he had budgeted, that consumed more coal and water and electricity than the engineers had estimated. He saw a hotel that was already losing money even as the guests celebrated. But on opening night, those concerns felt distant. The champagne was flowing. The orchestra was playing. The chandeliers were sparkling. The plaza was full. It looked like a triumph. It felt like vindication. The illusion was perfect, and the bill was already growing behind the walls. When luxury became a liability, the same details that impressed guests began quietly bankrupting the building. The plaza was designed to feel effortless. Guests arrived and found their rooms ready, their luggage unpacked, their preferences anticipated. Fresh flowers appeared daily. Linens were changed twice a day. Meals arrived on silver trays at precisely the requested time. The building seemed to run itself. It did not. Behind the marble and gold leaf was a machine that consumed money at a rate no one had fully calculated. The hotel required 400 permanent staff members. Housekeepers, porters, cooks, dishwashers, laundry workers, telephone operators, elevator attendants, doormen, concierge, engineers, plumbers, electricians. Each one needed a salary, a uniform, meals, sometimes housing. The payroll alone cost more than $50,000 per month. That number climbed every year as labor unions organized and demanded higher wages. By 1920, the staff expenses exceeded $600,000 annually. In modern terms, that is more than $10 million spent just to keep people working inside the building. The plaza needed coal to heat 570 rooms through New York winters. The boilers in the basement burned through 300 tons of coal every month during the coldest season. Coal had to be delivered, stored, shoveled into furnaces by men who worked in shifts around the clock. The heating bill alone exceeded $20,000 each winter. The kitchens required constant deliveries. Fresh meat, fish, vegetables, cream, butter, eggs, flour, sugar, imported spices, French wine, champagne. The hotel served 3 meals a day to hundreds of guests, plus room service, plus private events in the ballrooms. The food costs ran more than $30,000 per month. The building consumed electricity like a small city. Every chandelier, every lamp, every elevator, every kitchen appliance, every telephone switchboard. The electrical bill climbed every year as more devices were installed to meet guest expectations. Water was pumped, heated, distributed through miles of copper piping. The laundry operation washed thousands of towels, sheets, tablecloths, napkins, uniforms every single day. Industrial washing machines ran constantly. The water and laundry costs together exceeded $10,000 monthly. Maintenance was relentless. Marble cracked and had to be replaced. Carpets wore down and needed repair. Plumbing leaked. Windows broke. Elevators required constant adjustment. The roof needed patching every spring. Paint faded in the sunlight and had to be refreshed. Every repair required skilled craftsmen who charged premium rates because the plaza demanded perfection. Fred Sterry kept detailed ledgers. He tracked every expense, every revenue stream, every occupancy rate. The numbers told a story that contradicted the public image. The plaza was full most nights. Guests paid premium rates. Events filled the ballrooms. The restaurants were always crowded, and the hotel was still losing money. The revenue could not keep pace with the operating costs. Even at full occupancy, even with room rates that exceeded every other hotel in the city, the income barely covered expenses. There was nothing left to pay down the construction debt, nothing left to deliver a profit to investors, nothing left to reward Harry Black for his vision. Black had built a hotel that was too expensive to operate profitably. The grandeur that attracted guests also created costs that no revenue stream could cover. The marble, the chandeliers, the ballrooms, the staff, the service, the reputation, all of it required money that the building could not generate. By 1915, 8 years after opening, the plaza had changed ownership twice. Both buyers believed they could fix the finances. Both discovered the same reality. The building was designed to impress, not to profit. The problem was structural. The plaza could not be run cheaply without losing the very qualities that justified its existence. Cutting staff meant slower service. Using cheaper materials meant visible decline. Reducing maintenance meant deterioration. The building demanded perfection, and perfection was expensive. Guests did not see any of this. They saw only beauty, only elegance, only effortless luxury. They paid their bills and left satisfied. They told their friends. The plaza's reputation grew stronger every year, but reputation does not pay debts. The owners who could not leave, selling the plaza, always looked easy until no one wanted the debt attached to it. The hotel changed hands 7 times between 1907 and 1943. Each sale followed the same pattern. A wealthy buyer, often a group of investors, purchased the property believing previous owners had simply managed it poorly. They arrived with confidence, capital, and plans to turn the finances around. They all failed. The first sale came in 1912, just 5 years after opening. Harry Black's construction company, the Fuller Company, sold the plaza to a real estate syndicate for $12.5 million. The buyers assumed the building's value would continue rising as Fifth Avenue became more prestigious. They were right about the value. They were wrong about the profits. The new owners lasted 3 years. In 1915, the hotel was sold again, this time to Conrad Hilton's early investors, though Hilton himself would not acquire it until much later. The sale price had already dropped to $10 million. The debt attached to the property exceeded the purchase price. This became the pattern. Each owner bought the plaza at a discount, assuming they could succeed where others failed. Each owner invested money in renovations, in updated systems, in marketing campaigns. Each owner watched the operating costs devour every improvement. The psychological trap was powerful. Once you owned the plaza, walking away meant admitting defeat. It meant accepting losses that most businessmen could not stomach. And there was always the hope that one more renovation, one more year, one more strategy would finally unlock profitability. That hope was expensive. Owners kept investing. They upgraded the kitchens, they renovated suites, they installed new elevators, new plumbing, new wiring. They hired famous chefs and prominent managers. They hosted lavish events to attract attention. They spent money trying to save money. The building absorbed it all and demanded more. By the 1930s, during the Great Depression, the plaza should have collapsed. Hotels across the city went bankrupt. Occupancy rates plummeted. Wealthy guests disappeared. But the plaza survived. It reduced rates, cut staff, deferred maintenance. It became less grand, but remained open. This was the first hint of the building's true nature. It could adapt to survive, but it would not let owners profit. During the Depression, when other hotels died, the plaza simply waited. Occupancy dropped, revenue fell, but the building stayed full enough to cover basic operating costs. Owners lost money, but the hotel itself never closed. When prosperity returned after World War II, the plaza roared back to life. Occupancy climbed, rates increased, investors returned, and the cycle began again. A hotel magnate named Conrad Hilton finally acquired the plaza in 1943 for $7.5 million. Hilton was one of the most successful hotel operators in America. He had built a chain of profitable properties across the country. He believed the plaza could be managed like his other hotels. He discovered he was wrong within 2 years. Hilton tried everything. He standardized operations. He negotiated better supplier contracts. He increased room rates. He marketed the hotel nationally. He filled the ballrooms with corporate events. None of it mattered. The plaza consumed money faster than even Hilton could generate it. He kept the hotel for 20 years, from 1943 to 1963. During that time, the plaza remained the most famous hotel in New York. It appeared in movies, in novels, in society pages. Celebrities stayed there. Presidents visited. The reputation was untouchable. But Hilton never made significant profit from the building. When he finally sold it in 1963, he walked away relieved. He had owned dozens of hotels in his career. Only the plaza had defeated him. The next buyer was a real estate developer named Lawrence Wien. He paid $13 million and believed he could convert the hotel into a cooperative, selling individual rooms to wealthy buyers who would treat them as pieds-à-terre. The plan made sense on paper. It failed in execution. Wien held the property for 11 years. He sold it in 1974 for a modest profit, but only because real estate values in New York had climbed. The hotel itself had not generated the returns. By 1975, the pattern was undeniable. The plaza had consumed the ambitions of Harry Black, the resources of multiple investment syndicates, and even the expertise of Conrad Hilton. Every owner believed they were different. Every owner was wrong. The building was not difficult to manage. It was impossible to own profitably. and yet buyers kept arriving. The moment escape became impossible. By the time the numbers were clear, the owners were already trapped inside them. The plaza taught the same lesson to every owner, but the lesson arrived too late to matter. The trap was simple. You bought the hotel because its reputation justified the price. You invested in renovations because the building demanded upkeep. You hired premium staff because guests expected perfection. And then you discovered that all of it together, the prestige, the service, the beauty, generated just enough revenue to cover costs and nothing more. Walking away meant accepting a loss that most egos could not tolerate. Staying meant hoping that circumstances would change. Most owners stayed too long. The 1980s marked a shift. Leveraged buyouts became fashionable. Developers borrowed enormous sums to acquire properties, betting that rising real estate values would cover the debt. The plaza became a target for this new financial engineering. In 1988, Donald Trump entered the story. Trump was already famous in New York. He had built Trump Tower, renovated the Commodore Hotel into the Grand Hyatt, and cultivated a public image as a brilliant dealmaker. He wanted the plaza because owning it would cement his status. The hotel was not just real estate, it was a symbol. Trump paid $407 million. The price shocked the industry. No hotel in history had sold for that much. Analysts questioned whether the building could ever generate enough revenue to service the debt Trump had taken on to buy it. Trump dismissed the concerns. He believed his celebrity would attract guests. He believed his management skills would unlock efficiencies previous owners had missed. He was confident, charismatic, and completely wrong about the numbers. The purchase was financed almost entirely with borrowed money. Trump took out loans exceeding $320 million. The interest payments alone cost more than $30 million per year. To cover that, the plaza needed to generate extraordinary profits. It generated modest ones. Trump tried to cut costs. He reduced staff. He renegotiated supplier contracts. He raised room rates. He marketed the hotel as the ultimate luxury destination. Occupancy remained strong. Revenue increased slightly, but the debt was too large. The interest payments consumed everything. Within 3 years, Trump was negotiating with lenders to restructure the loans. He gave up day-to-day control in exchange for more time. He kept his name on the building but lost the authority to make decisions. By 1992, Trump was essentially broke. He owed more than $900 million across all his properties. The plaza was bleeding tens of millions annually. Lenders took over. Trump walked away with his reputation damaged, but his public image somehow intact. He had spent 4 years owning the most famous hotel in New York and lost a fortune doing it. The building, as always, survived. It was sold again in 1995 to a partnership that included Prince Al-Walid bin Talal of Saudi Arabia and the Singapore-based CDL Hotels International. The sale price was $325 million, a loss of more than $80 million from what Trump had paid just 7 years earlier. The new owners believed international capital and professional hotel management would succeed where Trump's ego had failed. They renovated extensively. They spent more than $400 million updating rooms, modernizing systems, restoring the facade. The plaza looked better than it had in decades. The operating costs climbed proportionally. By 2004, the hotel was losing money again. The renovation debt had been added to the existing mortgage. The interest payments consumed revenue. Occupancy was strong, but it was not enough. The pattern repeated. The owners who could not leave were not foolish. They were trapped by the same logic that had trapped everyone before them. Selling meant admitting failure and accepting a loss. Staying meant hoping that time would solve problems that time had never solved before. The plaza had taught this lesson for nearly a century. By 2004, the lesson was undeniable. Ownership was not a path to profit. It was a slow financial erasure measured in debt, pride, and ruined legacies. And still, buyers kept arriving. Donald Trump's golden albatross. When Donald Trump bought the plaza, he believed publicity could overpower mathematics. He announced the purchase at a press conference in 1988, standing in the Palm Court, surrounded by reporters and photographers. He called the plaza the ultimate trophy, a building that represented the pinnacle of luxury and success. He said owning it was a dream come true. The press ate it up. Trump had paid $407 million, the highest price ever paid for a hotel. He had borrowed most of it. The debt structure was complex, involving multiple lenders and balloon payments that would come due in just a few years. Financial analysts looked at the numbers and warned that the math did not work. Trump dismissed them publicly. He believed he could do what no one else had. Done. He would fill the hotel every night. He would raise room rates without losing occupancy. He would cut operating costs without diminishing quality. He would leverage his personal brand to attract high-paying guests who wanted to stay in a Trump property. The plan was not entirely irrational. Trump had successfully branded other properties. His name added value. Guests who stayed at Trump Tower paid a premium for the association. Why would the plaza be different? It was different because the plaza already had a brand. It did not need Trump's name. It needed someone who could make the numbers work. Trump could not. The operating costs were worse than he had expected. The staff union contracts were ironclad. Maintenance requirements were relentless. The building consumed money in ways that could not be reduced without visible decline. Trump had assumed that previous owners had been inefficient. He learned they had simply been realistic. He raised room rates aggressively. A suite that cost $300 per night in 1987 cost $600 by 1990. Guests paid. Occupancy remained above 80% most of the year, but the revenue increases barely covered the interest on the debt. Trump had borrowed $320 million at interest rates around 10%. That meant interest payments of roughly $32 million per year. The plaza's net operating income, the money left after paying all expenses but before servicing debt, was around $25 million annually. The building was losing money before Trump even started counting his loan payments. He tried everything. He reduced housekeeping staff. Guests complained. He cut back on fresh flowers in the Palm Court. Regulars noticed. He delayed maintenance. Inspectors flagged violations. Every cost-cutting measure eroded the very qualities that justified the plaza's premium rates. Trump was caught in the same trap that had snared every owner before him. The hotel demanded perfection to maintain its reputation. Perfection cost more than the building could earn. By 1990, Trump was negotiating with lenders. The loans were in default. The banks could have foreclosed, but foreclosing on the plaza meant taking responsibility for a money-losing operation. They preferred to restructure. Trump gave up operational control in exchange for more time and lower interest payments. His public story remained triumphant. He still called the plaza his crown jewel. He still told reporters it was the best hotel in the world. He did not mention the tens of millions in losses. He did not acknowledge that he no longer controlled the property. In 1992, Trump's entire empire was collapsing. He owed more than $900 million. His casinos were failing. His airline was bankrupt. The plaza was just one piece of a financial catastrophe. Lenders forced him to sell assets. The plaza went on the market. It sold. In 1995, for $325 million, $82 million less than Trump had paid. Trump claimed publicly that he made a profit by negotiating favorable loan terms. The lenders told a different story. They took losses to escape a property that was destroying capital. Trump had owned the plaza for 7 years. During that time, the hotel remained famous, glamorous, and full. It appeared in movies. Celebrities stayed there. The press covered it constantly. Trump's ownership had added to the mythology, but the numbers told the truth. Trump lost tens of millions of dollars. The building consumed his money, his time, and his credibility with lenders. He walked away diminished financially, but somehow enhanced in the public imagination. He had owned the plaza. That fact alone, regardless of the losses, added to his legend. The building did not care about legends. It simply waited for the next owner. The mirage of global capital foreign money arrived believing distance would protect it from the plaza's curse. By the early 2000s, American capital had learned to avoid the plaza. Every major hotel operator, every prominent real estate investor, every financial analyst in New York knew the building's history. It had consumed Harry Black's fortune, humbled Conrad Hilton, bankrupted Trump, and disappointed a dozen others. Domestic buyers stayed away, but international investors saw an opportunity. They saw a legendary property in the heart of Manhattan. They saw strong occupancy and premium rates. They saw a brand recognized worldwide. They believed that professional management and global capital could succeed where American money had failed. In 2004, the Elad Group, an Israeli real estate firm, purchased the plaza for $675 million. The price stunned observers. It was twice what the property had sold for just 9 years earlier. Elad financed the purchase with enormous loans from internationals, banks. Elad immediately announced a plan to convert most of the hotel into luxury condominiums. They would sell individual units for millions of dollars to wealthy buyers who wanted a Fifth Avenue address. Only a portion of the building would remain a hotel. The rest would be privatized, sliced into assets that could be sold separately. The plan made sense. New York real estate was booming. Luxury condos were selling at record prices. Wealthy Russians, Chinese, and Middle Eastern buyers were pouring money into Manhattan properties. The plaza's location and reputation made it ideal for conversion. Elad spent more than $450 million on renovations. They restored the facade, updated every system, redesigned the interiors. They hired celebrity designers. They marketed the units to billionaires. The condos sold for between $2 million and $50 million each. On paper, the math worked. But Elad had borrowed too much. The purchase price plus renovation costs exceeded $1.1 billion. Most of it was debt. The condo sales generated revenue, but not enough to cover the loans and the cost overruns. The remaining hotel portion continued losing money. By 2008, as the financial crisis hit, Elad was in trouble. They sold a portion of their stake to the Sahara Group, an Indian conglomerate led by brothers Subrata Roy and Sharad Roy. Sahara paid $380 million for a controlling interest in 2012. They assumed Elad's debt and took on responsibility for the operation. Sahara believed they could finish what Elad had started. They planned to convert more rooms into condos, to market the hotel internationally, to leverage their connections in India and the Middle East. They borrowed more money. They invested in upgrades. They hired new management. The plaza consumed it all. By 2014, Sahara had defaulted on more than $600 million in loans. Subrata Roy was arrested in India on unrelated fraud charges. The company could not service the debt. Lenders seized control. The plaza went into receivership. $600 million. The number was staggering. It represented the largest default tied to a single hotel in American history. Sahara had lost more money faster than any previous owner. The plaza had defeated international capital just as decisively as it had defeated American money. The building, as always, remained full. Guests still paid premium rates. The restaurants were crowded. The Palm Court still served afternoon tea. The facade gleamed. To visitors, the plaza looked exactly as it had for more than a century. Timeless, elegant, untouchable. Behind the scenes, ownership had dissolved into a legal maze. Multiple lenders held pieces of the debt. Lawyers negotiated for years. The building operated in a kind of suspended animation, profitable enough to stay open but too debt-laden to deliver returns to anyone. The foreign capital experiment had failed completely. Elad and Sahara together had lost more than $1 billion. They had tried modern financial engineering, global marketing, aggressive asset slicing. None of it mattered. The plaza had proven itself immune to every strategy. The pattern was now undeniable across more than a century. Domestic capital failed. International capital failed. Individual owners failed. Corporate owners failed. Financial engineering failed. Professional management failed. The building simply did not allow profitable ownership. Bankruptcy without closure. The plaza changed hands again, but nothing about its appetite had changed. In 2018, after years of legal battles, the debt was finally restructured. The hotel portion of the plaza was separated from the condo units. New investors, a group including the Qatari Sovereign Wealth Fund and the New York real estate firm Ashkenazi Acquisition Corporation, took control. They paid roughly $600 million to acquire the hotel and settle the outstanding loans. The price was lower than what Sahara had paid, lower than what Elad had paid, lower than what Trump had paid. Each sale marked a decline, a recognition that the building could not support the valuations that owners kept assigning to it. The new owners did not promise transformation. They did not claim they would succeed where others had failed. They simply stated they would operate the hotel professionally and maintain its reputation. It was a modest ambition, perhaps the first realistic one in the plaza's history. But even modest ambitions cost money. The building still required hundreds of staff members, still consumed massive amounts of energy, still demanded constant maintenance, still competed with newer hotels that had been designed for efficiency rather than grandeur. The operating costs had not declined. If anything, they had increased. Labor costs in New York had climbed. Energy prices had risen. Compliance with modern building codes and safety regulations required expensive updates. The plaza was more costly to operate in 2018 than it had been in 1907, even accounting for inflation. And yet the building survived. It survived Trump's bankruptcy. It survived Sahara's $600 million default. It survived the 2008 financial crisis and the 2020 pandemic that emptied hotels worldwide. Through every catastrophe, every ownership change, every default, the plaza remained open. The rooms were always occupied. The restaurants were always serving. The Palm Court still glowed with afternoon light. Weddings still filled the ballrooms. Tourists still posed for photographs outside the Fifth Avenue entrance. The building had learned something its owners never did. Survival did not require profit. It required only enough revenue to cover operating costs. The plaza could survive indefinitely as long as it attracted guests, even if those guests generated no returns for investors. This was the final revelation. The plaza was not a failed business. It was a successful building that happened to destroy everyone who tried to own it. The distinction mattered. A failed business closes. A successful building endures. The plaza endured because it had value beyond financial returns. It had cultural significance. It had historical importance. It had a reputation that transcended any single owner. That reputation kept guests arriving. And as long as guests arrived, the building could pay its staff, cover its utilities, maintain its facade. It did not need to generate profit. It only needed to persist. By 2025, the plaza had survived 118 years. It had outlasted more than a dozen owners. It had consumed billions of dollars in capital. It had bankrupted some of the most confident businessmen in American history. And it remained exactly what it had always been. A palace on Fifth Avenue, a building too expensive to own, too beautiful to abandon, too valuable to let die. Ownership had become irrelevant. The plaza no longer belonged to anyone in the way that Harry Black or Donald Trump had imagined. It belonged to itself. It belonged to its history. It belonged to the city. The building had won. How the plaza actually survives. The hotel thrives precisely because no one truly owns it anymore. The solution was not better management or smarter financing. It was fragmentation. The plaza survived by becoming impossible to own in the traditional sense. No single entity controls it. No individual bears the full burden of its appetite. The condo hotel model saved the building. When Elad converted most of the plaza into luxury condominiums, they sliced the asset into pieces. Individual units were sold to separate buyers. Some purchased them as residences. Others bought them as investments. The hotel operator manages the units when owners are not using them, renting them to guests, and splitting the revenue. This model distributes the cost and the risk. No one person absorbs the full operating expenses. No one investor holds all the debt. The building's hunger is spread across dozens of balance sheets instead of consuming a single fortune. The remaining hotel portion operates under long-term management contracts. Professional hotel companies run the day-to-day operations. They collect fees based on revenue, not profit. They have no incentive to cut corners because they do not bear the losses. They simply maintain the standards and take their percentage. The ownership structure is so complex that it is almost meaningless. Multiple entities hold stakes: sovereign wealth funds, private equity firms, individual condo owners, hotel operators. Each has limited exposure. Each can walk away without catastrophic loss. This fragmentation would have horrified Harry Black. He wanted to build a monument with his name on it, a property he could control completely. He believed ownership meant power. The plaza taught him otherwise. It would have frustrated Conrad Hilton, who built an empire on centralized management and standardized operations. The plaza cannot be standardized. It cannot be controlled from a corporate headquarters. It demands local attention, constant adaptation, endless investment. It would have enraged Donald Trump, who craved symbols of dominance. Owning the plaza was supposed to prove his supremacy. Instead, it proved that some buildings are stronger than the men who try to possess them. The fragmented model works because it aligns with the plaza's true nature. The building does not want an owner. It wants resources, attention, reverence. The condo model provides all three without requiring any single person to sacrifice everything. Guests do not notice the difference. They check in at the Fifth Avenue entrance. They ride elevators to rooms that look exactly as they did decades ago. They eat in restaurants that serve the same afternoon tea. They attend events in ballrooms that have hosted weddings for more than a century. The plaza's reputation remains intact because the fragmentation is invisible. The building feels timeless, unchanging, permanent. No one sees the legal structures, the management contracts, the debt instruments that now define ownership. This is how institutions survive human ambition. They outlast it. They adapt without appearing to change. They find ways to persist that do not depend on any individual's success or failure. The plaza no longer needs an owner in the way it once did. It needs stewards, managers, investors willing to accept modest returns in exchange for association with a legend. That is a much easier role to fill. The building has become what it always should have been, not a possession, but a monument. Not a business, but a landmark. Not owned, but maintained. And in that transformation, it found the only path to immortality it ever had. A curse or a calculation. Staff whisper about a curse. Accountants point to spreadsheets, and both might be right. The stories started early. Housekeepers claimed certain rooms felt wrong. Guests reported hearing music in empty ballrooms. Security guards working overnight shifts described elevators moving between floors with no one inside. By the 1920s, the whispers had become part of the plaza's mythology. Some claimed the building was haunted by Harry Black himself, doomed to watch his fortune dissolve inside the walls he had built. Others spoke of a bride who had died on her wedding night in 1912, her presence lingering in the ballroom where she had danced hours before her death. Still others insisted the curse was older, tied to the land itself, a plot that had never wanted a structure this large or this hungry. The staff did not dismiss these stories. They had watched too many owners arrive confident and leave broken. They had seen the pattern repeat so many times that coincidence seemed insufficient as an explanation. The plaza felt sentient to those who worked there daily. It felt like a presence that demanded tribute. But accountants saw something different. They saw a building designed during an era when operating costs were not carefully modeled. They saw a structure built with materials that required expensive maintenance. They saw a layout that wasted space and made efficient staffing impossible. They saw debt structures that had compounded over decades, each new owner adding loans to cover the last owner's mistakes. The curse was in the numbers. The plaza cost roughly $60,000 per room per year to operate. That number included staff, utilities, maintenance, compliance, taxes, insurance. A typical luxury hotel in New York cost half that. The plaza's operating costs were double the industry standard. Why? The building was old. Old buildings require more maintenance. The design was inefficient. Inefficient designs require more staff. The reputation demanded perfection. Perfection costs money. The debt was layered. Old debt accumulates interest. Every owner inherited problems that could not be solved without destroying the very qualities that made the plaza valuable. Modernizing the building meant stripping away historical features. Reducing staff meant diminishing service. Cutting corners meant losing the guests who paid premium rates. The economics were brutal, but not mysterious. The plaza was simply a bad investment that looked like a good one. The curse was capitalism, not spirits, and yet the stories persisted. Staff members who had worked there for decades swore the building had a personality. They described a feeling, a presence, a sense that the plaza was aware of its owners and actively resisted them. They claimed the building liked guests but hated the people who tried to control it. One longtime concierge described it this way: "The plaza is generous to those who serve it and cruel to those who think they own it. Guests leave happy, owners leave ruined. That is not a business pattern, that is intention. The paranormal and the economic are not mutually exclusive. A building can be haunted by bad math. A curse can be written in loan agreements and operating budgets. The plaza's destruction of its owners could be both supernatural and utterly predictable. Perhaps the truth is that curses are simply patterns we cannot break. The plaza has a pattern. It attracts ambitious men. It consumes their fortunes. It outlasts them. That pattern has held for more than a century across wildly different owners in completely different economic eras. At some point, a pattern becomes indistinguishable from fate. The staff believe in the curse because they have watched it work. The accountants dismiss it because they can explain every loss with numbers. Both groups are observing the same reality. They simply describe it differently. The plaza does not care which explanation is correct. It stands on Fifth Avenue, full of guests, indifferent to belief, immune to analysis. It has survived skeptics and believers alike, and it will outlast both. The price of wanting forever. The plaza still stands, asking the same question it has always asked of the rich. The question is simple. What does ownership mean when the thing you own cannot be controlled? Harry Black thought ownership meant legacy. He believed that building the plaza would secure his name for generations. He died broke and largely forgotten. The plaza remembers him only as the first man it destroyed. Conrad Hilton thought ownership meant mastery. He had conquered dozens of hotels. He applied his expertise, his systems, his discipline. The plaza defeated him anyway. He sold it relieved to be free. Donald Trump thought ownership meant power. He believed that possessing the plaza would prove his dominance. He lost tens of millions and surrendered control within years. The building took his money and gave him nothing but a story. The Sahara Group thought ownership meant opportunity. They saw global markets, international capital, financial engineering. They defaulted on $600 million. The plaza consumed their ambitions as easily as it had consumed everyone else's. Every owner wanted forever. The plaza offered only temporary possession at permanent cost. The building would let you stay as long as you kept paying, but it would never belong to you. This is the lesson that more than a century of owners failed to learn. Some things are not meant to be possessed. They are meant to be experienced, admired, supported, but never controlled. The plaza is one of those things. It exists beyond ownership. It has value that cannot be captured on a balance sheet. It has significance that transcends profit. It offers something that money can buy but cannot keep. Visitors understand this instinctively. They stay for a night, a week, a month. They experience the beauty, the service, the history. They pay their bill and leave satisfied. They do not try to own the building because they understand that the value lies in the experience, not the possession. Owners never learned that lesson. They arrived wanting to capture permanence, to turn beauty into an asset, to make history profitable. The plaza let them try. And then it took everything. The building stands today exactly as it stood in 1907. The marble still gleams. The palm court still glows. The ballrooms still host weddings. The Fifth Avenue entrance still welcomes guests who pay premium rates for rooms that feel like palaces. The difference is that no one believes they own it anymore. The ownership is fragmented, distributed, abstracted into legal structures that make individual control impossible. The plaza belongs to itself now. It belongs to its history. It belongs to the city. And in that belonging, it has finally found peace. The building no longer needs to destroy anyone because no one arrives believing they can possess it. The appetite remains, but it is fed by many sources instead of consuming a single fortune. The price of wanting forever is everything you have. Harry Black paid it. Conrad Hilton paid it. Donald Trump paid it. The Sahara Group paid it. More than a dozen others paid it. The plaza collected every payment. It stands unchanged, untouchable, eternal. Not because it is profitable, not because it is manageable, but because it is exactly what it was always meant to be. A monument that no one can own. A palace that belongs only to itself. A building designed to outlast every man who believed he could control it. The plaza won. The owners lost. History recorded both. And the question remains for anyone who looks at the gleaming white facade on Fifth Avenue and feels the pull of possession. What does it cost to own forever? The answer is written in a century of bankruptcies, defaults, and ruined ambitions. Everything.